10 years. I spent 10 years trying to keep our marriage strong, maybe even pretending it was something it wasn't. I should have known better. My name is Liam Torres. I'm 39 years old, and I've been a firefighter in Asheville, North Carolina for almost 2 decades. I'm used to chaos. I'm trained for it, but nothing could have prepared me for what happened that night. I got to the winery just before 6. The place sat high on a ridge overlooking the Smokies, all soft jazz, candlelight, and $100 wine pours. I'd reserved the private terrace and even asked them to chill the bottle of red Hannah liked, the one with the label she always mispronounced. I was wearing a tailored navy suit that I had had altered twice just to make sure it fit right. In my coat pocket was a velvet box with sapphire cufflinks, custom made. Our initials etched into the silver backs, H+L. She was supposed to be there by 6:30. At 7, I ordered my second glass and watched couples get seated around me. By 8, the hostess started giving me that pitying smile. By 8:30, I stopped checking my phone. And then, at almost 9, she showed up, not alone. Hannah walked in, laughing, actually laughing, flanked by 3 coworkers I didn't even recognize. Loud, flashy people who looked like they'd just come from a nightclub, not an anniversary dinner. One of the women was holding a plastic tiara in her hand. One of the guys had glitter on his cheek. And there was Hannah, hair curled, lipstick perfect, wearing that red dress, the one I bought her for our last anniversary. She saw me. Didn't slow down. "Liam!" she called out like I was a coworker she'd run into by chance. She slid into the seat across from me, not even noticing the candles, the wine, the cufflink box still sitting in the center of the table. "You didn't say this place was so stuffy." The others dragged chairs over, laughing like we were all in on the same joke. Except we weren't, not even close. "Babe, I told them you'd be here all dressed up," she said with a mocking grin. "Didn't I say he'd look like a loyal little mascot?" She glanced around at her friends. "Told you. Look at that face. Always ready to please." They laughed. I didn't. I smiled, just barely, nodded. One of her friends snorted into her wine. "You're really that husband, the one who plans romantic surprises and texts goodnight with heart emojis?" "Every single night," Hannah said, sipping my wine like it was hers. "He's like Alexa but with arms, predictable, always listening, never argues." I didn't say anything, just stared at her while she adjusted the strap on her dress like nothing was wrong. Then, just like that, she got up. "Powder room," she said, already halfway across the terrace. "Don't wait up." She didn't look back. I sat there, surrounded by strangers, pretending not to stare, with that velvet box still untouched between the wine glasses. I took a long sip, nodded at the server for another pour, and wondered, for the first time in a long time, how I hadn't seen this coming. Not just the absence, the mockery, the absolute cruelty of it. I didn't go home that night. Instead, I checked into a roadside lodge 20 minutes down the mountain, paid in cash, and told the clerk I didn't need room service. The place smelled like burnt coffee and pine-scented air freshener. My room had stained carpet and a flickering lamp, but I didn't care. I wasn't looking for comfort. I just needed somewhere Hannah wouldn't think to look. I sat on the edge of the bed for what felt like an hour, staring at the closed velvet box in my hand, still unopened, still waiting, like some fool's version of hope. I finally shoved it into the nightstand drawer and shut it hard enough to rattle the lamp. Sleep didn't come easy. The image of her laugh, her friends' faces, that line, MASCOT, kept looping in my head like a song I couldn't mute. My phone was on the nightstand, screen down, still on silent. I didn't want to look, but around 5 in the morning, I did. 85 missed calls, most of them between 3 and 5 a.m. 10 voicemails, one from Hannah. Her voice was syrupy at first, like nothing had happened. "Liam, come on, don't be like this. It was just a joke." Then quieter. "You know how I get when I drink? You always say I run my mouth, right? So, yeah, just call me. Just a joke." I deleted it. I tossed the phone aside and collapsed back onto the bed, arms over my eyes. But it wasn't even 20 minutes later that another message came through. No caller ID. Just a text with a download link, no words. I should have ignored it. I should have thrown the phone into the ice bucket and let it drown. But I clicked it. A video. It was shaky and dim, clearly taken on a phone, but I saw everything. That same red dress, that same laugh, and Logan. Logan, my gym buddy. The guy I spotted during lifts, the guy who asked about my marriage during cool-downs and called Hannah classy. He had his hand on her hip like it belonged there. She was pressed up against him, head thrown back, whispering something into his ear before pulling him into a kiss that didn't look new. It looked practiced, familiar. I watched them move together like they'd done it 100 times. Because they had. Suddenly every girl's night she came home exhausted from made sense. Every fake fight she picked just to storm off. Every weekend she needed space. I should have felt rage, but all I felt was hollow. Like someone had scooped the inside of me out with a shovel and left the shell sitting upright just to fool people into thinking I was still there. I sat there for a long time. The video paused on her face, smiling, relaxed, not a single flicker of guilt. Eventually, I put the phone down, stared at the popcorn ceiling. The old me, the guy from yesterday, would have gone back and tried to talk it out. Reason with her. Ask questions like why and how long and was it something I did. But the guy in that motel room, he didn't need answers anymore. He already knew. 2 days later, I went home. I didn't go back to talk or to fight or even to hear her out. I went because I needed closure, the real kind, not a voicemail, not a video. I needed to look her in the eye and let her know I was done, for good. It was just past 6 when I pulled into the driveway. The porch light was already on. Her car was there, parked like it always was, perfectly straight, neat, pretending like everything was normal. I stepped into the house and knew immediately she wasn't expecting me. The music was playing, something upbeat and synthetic. Perfume lingered in the air, heavy and floral. She was in the hallway, heels clicking against the hardwood, applying lipstick in the mirror like she had somewhere important to be. And she looked, well, she looked stunning. Glossed lips, hair curled, little black dress I hadn't seen before. I cleared my throat. She turned like she'd heard a ghost. "Oh," she said, startled. Then, just like that, her face hardened. "You're back. For now?" She rolled her eyes, blotting her lips with a tissue. "You couldn't text?" "I figured after 85 missed calls, a surprise visit wouldn't kill you." She laughed once, sharp and short. "Still dramatic, huh?" I stepped closer. "We need to talk." She didn't even look at me, just kept adjusting her earrings. "Now's not really the time, Liam. I have plans." "Cancel them." She turned to face me finally, hands on her hips. "Number, I won't. You walked out, remember? Now you want to talk on your schedule?" "I saw the video, Hannah." She blinked, and for the first time, her mouth opened slightly, but just for a second. "Oh," she said, like it meant nothing. "You mean that little clip someone sent? It's not what you think. I think it's you and Logan, grinding like teenagers in a bar bathroom. Looked pretty clear to me." She sighed, exasperated. "Liam, it was just a night out. It got a little messy." "It wasn't just one night." My voice cracked, not with weakness, just the sound of something finally snapping. "It's been going on for months, maybe years." She crossed her arms. "Okay, fine. You want honesty? Here it is. Logan makes me feel alive. He doesn't try to fix me. He doesn't sit around planning anniversaries like some Boy Scout. He actually sees me." "I saw you," I said, my voice low. "No," she said, stepping closer. "You saw what you wanted me to be. The sweet wife, the dinners, the cuddles, always waiting by the door with a smile. You didn't want a partner. You wanted a routine." I stared at her. "I wanted a marriage." She laughed bitterly. "Marriage? God, you make it sound like some holy vow. People grow, Liam. They change. You just stayed stuck in place. So safe. So boring. And, yeah, Logan wasn't part of the plan, but you weren't exactly hard to cheat on." I didn't flinch. Not anymore. "You done?" She shrugged. "What else is there to say?" I nodded. "Then I'll say it. I'm done, Hannah. No fights. No second chances. I'm not going to beg for respect in my own damn house." She turned back to the mirror. "Great. More wine for me." I grabbed my keys from the hook and walked to the door. "Where will you go?" she asked, not bothering to look. "Anywhere but here." And this time, I didn't slam the door. I didn't cry. I just left. The apartment above the tattoo parlor wasn't much, but it was mine. 1 bedroom, low ceilings, a window that overlooked the back alley instead of the street. The floors creaked when I walked. The radiator rattled at night. But the quiet? The quiet was a gift. That first week was strange. My whole world used to be early shifts at the firehouse and evenings texting Hannah about dinner. Now, it was instant noodles, silence, and unpacked boxes I didn't bother labeling. I didn't even hang pictures. I didn't need comfort. I needed detachment. On the fourth night, just past midnight, I heard the pounding on the door. I didn't have to look to know it was her. "Liam!" she shouted. "I know you're in there." I stood in the middle of the living room, staring at the door like it might disappear. She kept banging. "Come on, just open the damn door." I cracked it an inch and looked through. She was barefoot, mascara smudged, hair a mess. Her eyes were glassy, maybe drunk, maybe not. "You need to leave," I said flatly. She shoved the door wide open and walked right past me. "I can't believe you just ran. Like a coward." "I didn't follow her. How did you even find me?" "Firehouse calendar still had this address on it," she muttered, pacing. "And don't worry, I didn't come to beg." I leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "You broke in to insult me?" "No," she snapped. "I came to remind you what you're giving up. You think you're some noble guy walking away, but you're pathetic, Liam. You always have been." I let her talk. I didn't react. That seemed to bother her more than if I'd yelled. She stepped closer, voice low and venomous. "You think people respect you? They don't. You're a background character, a safety net. That's all you've ever been." I looked at her calmly. "Then why are you here?" She flinched like she hadn't expected that. "I don't know," she said quieter. "Maybe I thought you'd fight for me." I shook my head. "You didn't want a husband. You wanted a fan club. I'm not clapping for you anymore." She stared at me. Her lip trembled for a second, then hardened again. "You're weak," she spat. "You always were. That's why I cheated, because deep down, you bored me." I opened the door. "Get out." She didn't move. I said, "Get out." She stormed past me, but paused in the doorway. "You'll regret this. You'll be alone, and no one will care." I closed the door in her face. 3 days later, the divorce papers arrived, filed by her, claiming emotional abandonment. I laughed when I read it, not because it was funny, because it was so predictable. When she couldn't control the story, she tried to rewrite it. The attorney's letter was full of buzzwords, unresponsive, distant, neglectful. All of it designed to flip the script and make me the villain. But I didn't respond. I signed, quietly. Because she was right about one thing. I was done. Not with love, not with healing, just with her. It was a Tuesday when the photo came through. I was in the back of the apartment, oil under my nails, trying to fix the busted radiator myself, when my phone buzzed on the counter. It was from Tyler, one of the guys at the station. We hadn't talked much since I left the house, but he still checked in every now and then. The message just said, "Didn't know if you'd seen this. Sorry, man." Attached was a photo. Hannah and Logan, arm in arm, standing in front of a jewelry store in downtown Asheville. Logan was grinning like he just hit the lottery. Hannah had her hand resting on his chest, showing off a brochure from the glass counter. The background said it all. Engagement specialists since 1981. 2 weeks. That's how long it had been since she screamed at me in the hallway and slammed my door on the way out. 14 days, and now she was ring shopping with the guy who used to bench press next to me at the gym. I didn't throw my phone. I didn't scream. I just stood there, breathing slow, like I was back in a smoke-filled stairwell and trying not to choke. Later that night, my mom called. She said she'd run into Hannah at the grocery store. Said Hannah told her I had bailed and left everything a mess. She looked great, Mom said, like that mattered. Happy, confident. I didn't say anything. "She told me you overreacted," she added, quieter now. "That you were distant for a long time, and Logan was just a comfort." "A comfort," I repeated. "She said you were always working, that she tried to talk to you, but you wouldn't listen." That stung worse than the photo. I hung up before she could say more. Not because I was angry at my mom, she only knew what Hannah told her, but because I finally realized something that had been creeping in since the winery. Nobody really saw me, not even the people who were supposed to. That night, I went through my phone and started deleting. Photos, videos, text threads, all the little digital footprints of a life I thought was real. I paused on one picture. It was from a weekend trip to Charleston 2 summers ago. She was sitting in the sand, laughing at something I'd said. Her hair blowing sideways, no makeup. That was the one I used to look at when I needed to believe we still had something worth saving. I deleted it, every single one, even the good ones. especially the good ones, because they weren't real. Or maybe they were, but only to me. To her, they were just chapters in a story she had already rewritten. The worst part wasn't the cheating. It wasn't Logan. It wasn't even the lies. It was how fast she replaced me, how easily she erased me. I wasn't a husband. I was a placeholder. And the second I stopped smiling through it, she found someone who would. But not this time. Not anymore. The message came in just after lunch. I was sitting on the balcony outside the apartment, legs up on the railing, sketch pad in my lap, coffee gone cold. The sky was gray and the air smelled like someone downstairs was burning incense again. I almost didn't check the notification. Carly H. Hey Liam, I know this is random, but can we talk? Carly, one of Hannah's old coworkers. I hadn't thought about her in months. She was always the quiet one in the group, polite, not fake laughing like the others. She'd given me a polite nod at the winery that night before disappearing behind a wall of snickering voices. About Hannah. I should have said something a long time ago. I just stared at the screen. Then I replied, "Go ahead." It took her a few minutes, but when the typing bubbles stopped, I felt like I'd been punched in the chest. She cheated before Logan, more than once. It started, I think, around year 3 of your marriage. On work trips, retreats, even during the holiday party when she said she was too tired to go. I sat there frozen. The coffee spilled slightly as I set the mug down too fast. We didn't know all the details back then. She was sneaky, but not that sneaky. Some of us started putting it together. Honestly, we thought you knew. That line made my stomach turn, or didn't care. I couldn't even type for a minute. My hands had gone stiff. She kept going. We thought you were just that kind of guy, the quiet, loyal one who looked the other way. But seeing you at the winery that night, I realized maybe we were wrong. I'm sorry, Liam. We shouldn't have stayed silent. I put the phone down and leaned back in the chair, eyes closed. 3 years in. That would have been the same year I worked double shifts during fire season. The year I surprised her with that trip to Nashville for her birthday. The year I caught her crying in the bathroom at 2 a.m., and she told me it was just stress from work. I believed her. All of it. I opened my eyes and looked out at the cloudy sky. And I waited for the explosion, the rage, the broken glass moment where I'd punch the wall or scream into the emptiness. But it didn't come. What came instead was silence. Not the cold kind I'd been drowning in. This was stillness, clarity, the realization that I had spent years fighting for something that never actually existed, a version of her that lived only in my head, a marriage that only felt real because I loved it enough for both of us. And now, I felt nothing. Not hate, not grief, just the calm that shows up when the storm finally ends. Carly sent one last message. We all thought you were blind, but really, you were just the only one who loved her enough to not see it. I stared at it for a while. Then I turned my phone off and let the peace in. It started with therapy. Not because I needed someone to fix me. Hell, I didn't even want to talk at first. But after everything Carly told me, after everything I'd lost, I needed someone to look me in the eye and say, "You're not crazy." Dr. Reeves' office was small, plain, nothing like I expected. No couches, no inspirational posters. Just a man in his 60s with kind eyes and a quiet voice who didn't ask 1,000 questions. He just listened. I told him about the winery, the cufflinks, the video, the threats, the paper-thin lies. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just laid it out piece by piece, like evidence at a fire scene. He nodded slowly when I finished. "You didn't miss her?" he said calmly. "You missed who you hoped she'd become." That sentence sat with me for days. I started running again. Not for speed, just to feel something steady beneath my feet. The rhythm of it helped. I'd wake up before sunrise, lace up my old sneakers, and let the cold air clear out the clutter in my head. I dusted off a sketchbook I hadn't touched since college, started doodling again, just lines and curves at first, then faces, hands. A bench I wanted to build for the balcony. Sketching reminded me that my hands were good for more than swinging an axe or holding a hose. And speaking of hands, I started building. Nothing fancy. Just raw pine boards and hand tools from a pawn shop down the block. A bookshelf for the apartment. A stool for the kitchen. A nightstand made from leftover scraps. Sawdust under my nails felt better than silence in my chest. People at the station noticed the change first. I dropped by more. Grabbed beers after shift with the guys. Tyler asked if I was sleeping better. I was. I even helped cover a few calls again. Not officially back on duty, but close enough to feel like myself again. Then one night, Jack, the rookie, invited me to his birthday thing at some dive bar downtown. I almost said no, but something told me to go. It wasn't a wild night, just darts, cheap whiskey, and laughing with people who didn't know the whole story, and didn't need to. And at some point, I laughed too. Not politely, not the forced kind I used at family dinners. A real laugh from my chest. That moment stayed with me. Not because it was special, but because I didn't feel like I was pretending. I didn't check my phone once that night. No missed calls from Hannah. No fake apologies. She hadn't reached out in weeks, and for the first time, I wasn't waiting. I was just being. I'd spent so long living inside someone else's approval. So long telling myself if I just tried harder, stayed loyal longer, been a little further, maybe I'd be enough. But the truth was simpler than that. The damage was never my fault. I was just the one who kept trying to fix it. Now, I was finally learning how to build something new. Not a marriage, not a rescue, just myself. Piece by piece. It was a Sunday, late spring, sun warm on my shoulders, the kind of afternoon that made you forget the world ever hurt you. I was strolling through the Asheville farmers market, sipping on a black coffee and thumbing through jars of local honey when I saw her, Hannah. Across the row of tents, just past a guy selling homemade candles, she was standing beside a tall, bearded man in designer sunglasses. Not Logan, not the one after him either, a new one, her fourth since the divorce. She looked different. Not in a bad way, just thinner, hair blonder, eyes duller, that kind of tired you can't fix with sleep. She didn't see me at first, but then our eyes locked, and for a split second, I saw that flicker, recognition, maybe panic. Then she leaned in close to the guy and whispered something. He turned his head to glance at me, lips twisting into a smirk like he was in on the joke. They laughed. She laughed. It didn't sting, not even a little. I turned back to the honey display, picked a jar labeled blueberry infused, and paid cash. No dramatic stare down, no second guessing, just peace. Back at the apartment, I sat out on the balcony with my coffee and a slice of sourdough I'd picked up. The late afternoon sun dipped behind the trees, casting gold through the railing. A breeze came in soft, fluttering the edge of the notebook I'd left out earlier. And in that stillness, I realized something. The silence wasn't loud anymore. It wasn't a punishment. It wasn't the echo of what I'd lost. It was space, breathing room, freedom. I used to think I needed closure, some final scene where she apologized, admitted what she did, begged for a second chance. But closure isn't something you wait for. It's something you choose. And I had. Hannah was still out there, rewriting her story with a different cast every few months, still trying to fill a void that couldn't be filled, still pretending the problem was everyone else. But that wasn't my story anymore. Not my problem, not my pain, not my ghost. I took another sip of coffee, leaned back, and let the quiet settle in around me. Not cold, not empty. Just mine. It was a Thursday morning when I saw him, Logan, gas station on the south end of town, near the hiking trail I'd been hitting lately. I was grabbing a bottle of water and a protein bar when I spotted him by the coffee machine, pouring sugar packets into a cup, like he was trying to hide from the world. He turned, froze. "Liam," he said, voice tight. I didn't say anything. He looked thinner, hair a little longer, face sunburned like he'd been outside too long without thinking. His gym rat shine was gone, replaced by something closer to shame. "I've been meaning to reach out," he started, clearing his throat. I didn't move. Look, man, what happened with Hannah? It wasn't supposed to." He rubbed his jaw, eyes flicking around like he hoped I'd interrupt. "I messed up. Bad. I know that." Still, I said nothing. "She said things were basically over between you two, that you weren't connecting anymore, and I was stupid enough to believe it." I took a step past him and dropped my stuff on the counter. He followed. "Liam, can I say something?" I turned to him, not angry, not amused, just done. "You already did," I said flatly. Then I paid and walked out without another word. Back at the apartment, I sat at my workbench, smoothing the legs on a half-finished chair. The wood was soft and clean under my hands. Real, honest, nothing hidden beneath the surface. I picked up my journal later that night. First time in weeks. Not to write about Hannah, not about Logan, just me. How the runs felt easier now. How I'd finally figured out how to make a dovetail joint without swearing. How the new bookshelf smelled faintly like cedar every time I walked past it. I wrote about the way I was sleeping again. About how silence didn't weigh the same anymore. About how the balcony felt more like home than the living room ever did when I was married. I didn't write revenge fantasies. I didn't dream about winning. I didn't need to, because I wasn't bleeding anymore. Not from the betrayal, not from the years of bending myself into someone else's version of enough. I had changed my number 2 weeks before. Clean break. No voicemails, no unexpected calls from old friends who still thought I was working it out. No more windows open to the past. And that was the thing I never realized until recently. Healing isn't loud. It doesn't announce itself with trumpets and applause. It just shows up one day when you're alone in your kitchen, barefoot and eating toast, and realize you're not sad anymore, that you finally believe your own story, that your loyalty wasn't weakness, that your love wasn't wasted, that the failure wasn't yours. So, I closed the journal, stretched my arms, and leaned back in the chair I'd built with my own hands. Not because I had to, because I could. And that made all the difference. I spent the whole weekend building a bench, not a fancy one, just raw cedar, smoothed by hand, wide enough for 2 people, but meant for 1. I sanded every corner until it was soft under my fingertips, sealed it with a matte finish, and carried it onto the balcony in the early morning before the sun got too high. It was heavier than it looked, solid, like it was meant to stay put, no matter the wind. I set it against the wall, right where the sun touched the floorboards mid-afternoon, and sat down with my coffee. No music, no phone, no plans, just quiet. People always talk about moving on like it's some final milestone, like one day you wake up completely over it, no baggage, no scars. But it doesn't work like that. Not really. The truth is, some things never stop stinging. Sometimes I still catch myself remembering the old version of her, the version I made up in my head, the one who leaned into my chest during movies, who called me from the grocery store just to ask which kind of cereal I wanted. The one who only existed because I loved her so hard, she didn't have to try. But I don't miss her anymore. Not the real her. Not the woman who laughed at me in front of strangers. Not the woman who turned lies into punchlines and betrayal into lifestyle. That guy, the one who stayed up waiting, who brought wine to an empty table, who thought loyalty could fix anything, he's gone. And I don't mourn him either. Because who I am now, he's stronger, quieter, not softer, not harder, just steadier. I still wear the same watch, still wake up early, still talk to the guys at the firehouse when I drop by with donuts. But I don't explain myself anymore. I don't apologize for wanting more than scraps. I don't chase people who only ever looked back to make sure I was still there. The sun was warm on my arms as I sipped my coffee and watched a squirrel race across the power line like it had somewhere important to be. Below, a woman walked her dog, smiling at something only she could see. The world kept spinning. People kept living. So did I. The bench creaked a little when I leaned back, but it held, like I knew it would. Healing doesn't come with an announcement. It doesn't mean the pain never existed. It just means you're no longer bleeding from the same place. I wasn't over everything. I didn't need to be. I just needed to be here, whole, and finally free to write the next chapter, on my own terms. So, I finished my coffee, and I stayed a while longer, just breathing, just being.